Ciao guys and welcome back, it's your friend Luca, and in today's video we're gonna talk about the new Obsbot Tail Air. A great AI-powered power zoom 4K camera that is also very useful for streaming and multicam setups. Now let's first talk about what's so special about this camera. As you can see, it has a 2-axis gimbal, and thanks to the AI, this camera is going to be able to follow your movements in case you need to have some dynamic videos where you walk around the room, or maybe simply you're filming some behind the scenes where you don't want to really think about where to place the camera in case you're moving around a room or a space and you need some nice and dynamic behind the scenes. I've been testing this camera for a month in different scenarios, going from conferences, behind the scenes, filming some YouTube videos, streamings, webcam talk. So this camera was performing very well in all the situations I tested it. And I've also tested it during very long recording sessions. And I can easily say that this camera is very reliable, even if you need to record for 5 or 6 hours straight. So now that you have an idea of what this camera is capable of, let me talk about the specification. This camera weighs only 344 grams and it has an inbuilt battery that has approximately a duration of 2 hours. But you can still power the camera through a USB-C port, and for example, while I was filming conferences, I was simply powering the camera with a power bank, and the camera just ran for around 7-8 hours straight without any problems. The camera got a little bit warm, and it didn't shut down, and it didn't give some problem with the image, so the sensor didn't really overheat while filming for 7 hours straight. In this camera we have 8 megapixel 1/1 of 8 CMOS sensor with a pixel density of 4 micron. So this camera is going to perform pretty good even in low light. I believe that this sensor is using a DFD contrast-based autofocus system, because sometimes I see little pulsations, so I don't think this camera is having a PDAF algorithm built in. But with a 23mm f1.8 lens, I don't think that's a problem, so I consider the autofocus performances good enough for what the camera is built for. The ISO range is going from 100 to 6400. We have an electronic shutter speed of 1/8000, even if we don't have a shutter, so it's just electronic. We can both use the camera in autofocus or manual focus mode, and we are having a very nice 23mm focal length equivalent with a fast aperture of f1.8. The white balance range is going from 2000 to 10,000, and we are having a 6-axis gyroscope. Talking about photo and video resolution, this camera is able to record up to 4K 30 FPS, and if you want to film in Full HD, this camera is able to film up to 60 FPS. We are going to have two different codecs for recording our compressed video in a MP4 container, and I'm talking about H.264 and H.265, that are going to have 80 megabits per second. Talking about the gimbal is not removable, and we have a full rotation of almost 360 degrees, so you have to be careful when you place your camera in case you want to track someone moving really around a location, that you place the camera with the Obsbot logo facing the talent you're going to film. In this way, the camera is going to have more range when it has to track the subject, because in case you're gonna place the camera, let's say like this, with the red dot facing the talent, if the talent is going too much on that side, then the camera gets stuck and it cannot really keep following your target. So I experienced this problem by myself. I just randomly placed 3 of these cameras without paying attention to this detail. So it is important that you place it with the Obsbot logo facing your talent. Don't forget about that. And the maximum speed of this gimbal is 120 degrees per second. The camera has 2 inbuilt microphones that are very small, and they are good just for scratch audio in case you need to sync multiple videos in post-production. I wouldn't use them at all for audio when you need to edit your video, but instead I would simply use the 3.5mm port and attach maybe a Rode Wireless Go or the DJI mic to the talent. So in that way, you're gonna capture pristine and clean, good quality audio.
Here is a little vlogging test where we can see how the microphone is picking up the sound and how the gimbal is stabilizing the footage. And I'm holding the camera just with my hand without a little tripod, so I think the gimbal is going to be good enough. And because it's a 2-axis gimbal, maybe it's not compensating for some bounce in the work and some tracking features. It's working pretty well, I would say. So here I'm lit, the sun is in front of me. Now I'm going to do a backlit. I think it's working good enough. Let me know what do you think in the commentary below.
Talking about connectivity, this camera has Wi-Fi with a coverage of 140 meters in 2.4 gigahertz or 80 meters with the 5.8 gigahertz transmission, and it also has Bluetooth 5.0. But next to the wireless connectivity, you can connect this camera to your smartphone or computer thanks to the USB-C port, the micro HDMI port, and the Ethernet adapter. Talking about storage, this camera has a micro SD port that is kind of complicated to put the SD card in and out. So with short nails, it's very difficult to put it in. Actually, I can't. So I always have to find something to push the SD card in and out. And hopefully I don't damage the SD card while I do this procedure. So it would be nice if the guys from Obsbot will make this SD card slot a little bit easier to operate. Talking about operating temperatures, this camera can work between -10 to 40 degrees Celsius, and when the camera will reach 45 degrees Celsius, the battery will stop charging, but the camera will keep running thanks to the power supply that you're going to use to power the camera. So in case you're using a power bank, the camera will drain power just from the power bank and will keep the internal battery as an option in case you finish the battery in the power bank, so you don't risk that you're gonna lose footage. Now, the way I like to use this camera or multiple cameras, like I recently used 3 of these cameras to record a conference, is just using the smartphone, comfortably sitting on the chair and remotely control all the cameras in a super chill way. So this is a game changer in my opinion, because there are occasions where clients don't have a big budget to hire 3 or 4 camera operators that are running full frame or big cinema cameras. So the opportunity to give them a lower budget solution for their needs is kind of great, and I think that the quality of the footage is good enough in case your clients want to share the videos in LinkedIn where 1080p resolution is good enough, because in 4K you still get a bit of noise if you film conferences that are notoriously filmed in low light. So if you are going to downsample that footage from 4K to 1080p, the noise is not going to be visible anymore, and you're gonna have very usable footage for some LinkedIn videos. But in case you prefer to work with the micro HDMI or the Ethernet ports, you can simply use a remote controller to control up to 3 cameras remotely thanks to this nice wireless remote controller. Now, at the moment I'm recording this video, I see that Obsbot developed some ND filters for this camera. I don't have them, so I don't know how is the quality of those filters, but what I would love to see, if that's possible and if the gimbal can handle that weight, is like a teleconverter that is gonna transform this 23mm in something like a 50mm or a 70mm focal length, because if you work with multicam setups, it's always nice to have at least one camera that is a little bit more zoom in on the talents that are speaking on the camera. So I would really love to see a teleconverter, or if that's not possible, maybe produce one of these cameras with a 50mm equivalent, so we can play a little bit with different focal length in multicam setups. Talking about the app, I really like how it works. It's easy, intuitive, and you can literally control everything about the camera. Once you are connected to the Wi-Fi, it's very simple to control your camera. So in this case, I'm actually filming with 3 cameras, also the screen of the smartphone, so I can be pretty confused where to look at. I hope you don't mind. So as you can see, here we have the home, where you can control multiple cameras at the same time in case you have multiple cameras running, and you can actually control one camera at the time. So you cannot really control 3 cameras simultaneously. You always have to go in a camera, choose your settings, go out from the camera, and then enter in another camera. So in this case, I'm filming myself with a 23mm focal length that is at f1.8, so you can see a little bit of mess around because I didn't really frame the setup considering this camera, but yeah, we like to improvise here. So now I've set the auto tracking on, and as you can see, it's doing a very good job tracking me. And in the app you have the opportunity to choose different framing. For example, if you want a close-up while you are live streaming your footage, you can simply click on close-up, half body, full body, or you can let the camera decide for you what's handy in that situation. Here in the settings, we can choose from automatic exposure, where the camera is going to adjust automatically the ISO, the shutter speed, and the exposure value. So in this case it's set to 0, so I should be probably exposed. And I will say that during the recording session of the conferences, I didn't really like the automatic setting because while reviewing the footage I saw a little bit of flickering happening. So I suggest you to keep the manual exposures as much as you can, because it's gonna be a little bit safer in case you need to deliver professional footage. So here you can see you can adjust the shutter speed, the ISO value, and once you are out from this configuration, you can see the exposure value, that in this case it's minus 0.3, and that's working good. You can also set the focus from autofocus to manual focus, and for my experience I prefer to use manual focus with every camera. If it's a paid gig, I wouldn't take the risk of trusting autofocus cameras. Even if I'm working with the FX6 or the FX3 from Sony, I don't really trust autofocus. Doesn't matter, because sometimes someone can pass in front of you and your shot is going to be ruined. So I like to use it in manual focus. With a 23mm focal length is not going to be a problem because the depth of field is very large, so everything is going to be easily in focus. And you can choose the picture style from standard, outdoor. Actually I can change it now because we are not filming. Pastel, custom. Okay, custom, you can choose everything you want. And okay, nice, you can even lower the sharpness to remove some digital look from your footage. And auto white balance, so you can change from auto to daylight, fluorescent, tungsten, cloudy, but you can also set the proper amount according to the location you are filming. So in this case I'm filming with a daylight light, so we have 5600 Kelvin, and this is a pretty good picture in my opinion, except for the mess around. Sorry guys. Now the fourth button is going to be a playback, where you can see what did you film in the past. And I actually have some clips I filmed in the past I completely forgot that I should include in the video. And the playback is smooth. I believe I have a proxy file here, or is this transmitted from the camera? I believe this is being transmitted from the camera. I don't think the smartphone is recording proxies, because here I have a little download icon, so I can probably download it to my smartphone. And I think it's not going to be full resolution because it's 4 gigabytes of footage. I hope it's gonna transfer just proxies. I will write down in the commentary below what's gonna happen, because it's 5-minute video and it's gonna be too long to download that file. And finally, the last bottom is going to be settings, where you can control the gestures in case you need it. If you raise your hand and you put it next to you, the camera is gonna blink and is gonna turn the light from green to blue, and in that case the camera is going to track you. If you use this gesture, the camera is going to start recording. If you do it again, it will stop recording. If you do this gesture, the camera will zoom in the footage, and then in the app you can choose the amount of zoom you want. And when you do it again, the camera will zoom out. So I will do it again. We also have dynamic zoom. Oh. Okay, now it's working. So you can choose the amount of zoom you want in your footage. It's a bit tricky. Okay, this is good. Okay, now it's framing my face after a stop. So now full body and zoom in more. Okay, and when I remove my fingers, it's gonna reframe my head. So it's working pretty well. Now, if you're going to film multiple people, I would say disable maybe these gestures before you start recording, because it can happen that someone is going to do a little Italian gesture while talking, and maybe the camera will start or stop recording, or maybe zoom in, doing a couple of things that you don't really want to have in your footage. So unless you are filming yourself, keep in mind that you have to disable this gesture control for the good sake of your production. We can record audio with the default microphone, where you can adjust automatically the gain, and you can apply some noise reduction if needed. In the camera settings, you can change phase out exposure on and off, and you can change the ISO upper and lower limits. Another great feature of the Obsbot Tail Air is that you can remotely control your cameras thanks to the NDI module. That's something you have to buy separately, so you need to buy a license key from Obsbot, and in that way you can work professionally for live streaming setups thanks to the NDI module. In the media settings, you can also choose the type of encoder from H.264 to H.265, the frame rate, recording resolution, NDI RTSP resolution in case you're going to use that streaming platform, and HDMI output in case you're going to use the HDMI out. For example, while using the Blackmagic Atem Mini, where you want to control multiple cameras through the HDMI ports. In conclusion, I'm not that type of guy that is gonna tell you that you need to buy this camera, this is a must-have, and all that bullshit. But if you're curious to know my opinion about this camera, I will say that this camera is extremely handy to have, and I will probably use it and bring it with me all the time I run any type of production, just to have a C or D cam, or in case I need to remotely control one camera from an angle. It is kind of tricky to have access to, or in case I would love to film some behind the scenes that sometimes we film. So I can easily say that I'm extremely happy with these cameras. For the price, I consider that they are totally worth, and I see myself using them very often, even just for some small photography gigs where I want to film some nice behind the scenes that I always miss when I do reviews of camera lenses or cameras. So this camera is coming with me very often. If you need some extra information, I will leave a link in the description to the Obsbot website where you can find out more in case you need some detailed specifications. And if you have any question, feel free to write down in the comment area below. So this is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!